What's going on, folks? Today we're going to zero in on the perfect concealed carry option for you ladies.
Let's talk about it. All right, so more than likely, if you clicked on this video, you're a lady looking for some good concealed carry options. Maybe you're out there doing your research. Maybe you're trying to buy your first gun, or maybe it's your 9th gun. But yeah, we got some pretty good options here. So Zane, you want to start us off with what you got?
Yeah, absolutely. This here is the Bodyguard 2.0 from Smith&Wesson. So I think this is a pretty good option for a lady. Pretty small, lightweight firearm, nice and easy to conceal. It's got a manual safety on there, which I like, but a pretty good looking firearm. Shoots pretty well, and just nice and practical.
So my gun here, this is the P365, just the regular standard version. This is the first generation model. I think they've come out with a couple other generations. I know they have the X Macro version, which is a little bit bigger handle. This is also in 380. We have the Romeo X up there. This is the Rose edition of the P365, so it does have the Rose and SIG insignia right here on the Romeo X optic. It is an open one, it's not enclosed or anything. And then on the bottom here, you can see how there's a Rose kind of sketched in, laser engraved in on the handle, which makes it really good, but another super good option if you're wanting something small to conceal carry.
Yeah, definitely another good pick. Yeah, so I will say these are both 380 guns. They're both chambered in 380 ACP. So you might ask why 380? So typically a 9mm is going to be your standard defensive round for most handguns. 380 is just going to be a little bit softer shooting, a little bit less recoil for you, a little bit more manageable, as well as being lighter weight so that you can not only get a bigger capacity, but also just not have such a heavy firearm, which could be weighing you down, especially as maybe a lighter weight lady.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a good round. As far as like how much it costs to get, it's a little bit more expensive than 9mm, but you're kind of paying that premium because it's a smaller round that's actually gonna do just as much as a 9mm. When you look at the types of ammo and you go from 22 to 380, it's obviously a really big jump, especially in diameter of the bullet itself. But when you get to 9mm, because it was used for law enforcement and NATO and all these things, over time it just became cheaper in the ammo to get, and all the companies started manufacturing a 9mm, and that's why it's cheaper than 380. I
would say too, there's a lot of myths out there about 380. You know, a lot of people think it's not gonna get the job done. It's a little baby caliber. The truth is, you know, modern rounds that they're making, especially in the last 10 years, they do the job just fine. They're gonna be plenty than enough to stop pretty much every target you're gonna need to. And especially when you have a capacity of maybe like 10 to 12 rounds, you know, that's plenty enough. 380 will do the job, so don't listen to what other people say about it. Carry what you can shoot, that you feel comfortable with, and that works for you.
Yeah, and kind of going off what Zane said, I mean, at the end of the day, the more rounds you have, the more confident you're gonna be in what you're carrying. If you're only carrying something single stacked and it has, you know, 7 to 9 rounds, you kind of have to know, okay, if I empty this, I'm out. But when you can get something that can go from 10 to 12 rounds, it gives you about 4 more rounds of peace of mind, knowing that, like, you know, it's still a really small gun, and if I had to use more, I have more.
Yeah, I would also just piggyback off of that and say that, you know, 380 is a pretty light recoiling round. However, there's a lot of misconceptions with just what rounds recoil, what guns recoil, and the truth is a small gun is going to recoil more than a larger gun. That's just the truth of it. So when you're looking at something small, easy to carry, maybe fits your hands a little bit better if you have small hands, moving down to a 380 rather than like a 9mm, it's just gonna give you a little bit more recoil control, help you keep those shots on target and just not have to deal with that when you're trying to make those shots that count, so.
Yeah, especially, I mean, you can go look at, there's many different guns that are exactly this size or just like Zane's Bodyguard, but they range in, like, you can find some that are obviously in 22, 389, but then there's some that are in 45, and there's some tiny guns that, believe it or not, are even in like 45, 70. You can find any type of caliber in this big of a gun, and obviously the bigger the round, the more recoil you're gonna have. But just because the gun is small doesn't mean it's always gonna be the exact same recoil. If you put 380 into a smaller gun, it could feel snappy, but it's gonna be very smooth snappy. It's not gonna be a 9mm in this smaller of a gun or a 45 in this smaller of a gun, I feel like.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the reason we both picked these out and the reason we think these are really good for the ladies, especially for your first time buying a concealed carry, or if you want to buy just a gun to go shoot at the range, if your husband shoots, your boyfriend shoots, whatever the case may be, we have some pretty reasonable options why these are good picks for you. So I'll start with the 365. First of all, just hand size. I have pretty big hands. I know Zane has big hands. A lot of people have big hands, and when you're gonna go shoot something and you can't get your pinky on the gun, it makes it more difficult to be more accurate. So definitely it makes it easier for these small guns, especially if you have small hands, you're able to get your pinky on the bottom of the grip. So I'd say that's my first point, is just if you have small hands, these are gonna be an immediate great option for you.
Another great feature that makes it good for ladies is a manual safety. You got something tactile, you can click, when it's on, when it's off. It's easy to actuate, but stiff enough so that you don't accidentally actuate it, right?
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure both of ours are ambidextrous too.
Yeah.
So if you're a left-handed or right-handed shooter, it's not as common to be left-handed, but it's not just gonna be on one side of the gun. So you have it up here, it's gonna be on both sides of the gun, and the same with Zane's gun. Mm-hmm. So that way, if for some reason you are left-handed, you don't have to worry about adjusting it, putting it in your right hand, then changing to your left hand. It's an immediate, you take it out, you pull it down, take it off safe, and then you're ready to engage or use your gun in general.
Or even if your main hand is occupied, you could still reach in your bag, reach in your waistband, wherever, grab that gun out. It's still going to work the exact same way. So
yeah.
Another thing I would say also when it comes to that is the manual safety is good for purse carry. A lot of ladies like to carry in a purse. I don't blame you. It's a comfortable way to do it. So that's where weight is going to come into play, but also that manual safety. So if you're carrying in a purse, you got other stuff in there, it's jingling around. You want to make sure you have that extra layer of protection. I would still recommend putting this inside of a holster if you're going to put it in a purse, but just having that manual safety so that especially when you pull it out of your purse there, you can just, when you click that down, that it was indeed on safe. Yeah. But the weight starts to play a point once you go try to carry this in a purse as well. I've seen ladies carry a pretty heavy gun and actually wear out a purse just from the weight of the gun plus the ammunition. So something lightweight like this or that, it's gonna give you a little bit more longevity. You're not gonna feel it as much, and just be a little bit more comfortable, I'd say.
Yeah, a lot of people forget that a lot of the weight when carrying a gun comes from the ammo itself. When you start getting to a bigger size gun, more towards a 9mm or even something like this right here, you're gonna start running into 15 plus rounds. And if you're carrying like a sidecar with an extra mag, you're running into another pound of just ammo itself.
Capacity is definitely something to consider when you're going to a small gun. Both these guns do a great job on providing ample amount to feel comfortable. I usually prefer, minimum 10 rounds. These are both right at 10 rounds. With the Bodyguard, I do have the option of putting in this 12-round magazine, which will kind of give it a little bit of an extended appearance. Just a little bit more to hold on to down below, but again, it's not necessary. You can see even, I get a full grip just above where that starts. But just having options, it's nice. Even with such a small gun, to have a backup magazine is great. But yeah, just enough to get the job done in pretty much every situation. I think it's great.
I would definitely say these give a great option to get 10 to 12 rounds, which is going to give you enough confidence during your day.
Also, I'd say a great thing about these 365s is that even with the smallest one like this, you could still get a full 17 round magazine. I think they make the 17 like plus 2 or 3s.
Yep.
Those will work all day, if you had that in your purse if you're a lady, or maybe even not a lady, but whatever, just being able to have that modularity, it's kind of nice, but still having such a small gun at the end of the day.
100%.
So something important to think about, I would say, if you're considering either of these firearms or just a gun like this in general, it's going to be to think about your practical accuracy, right? Like, what is a gun like this for? What can you expect to get out of it? And how does it actually perform in the real world? So in my opinion, I'd say this is probably a max, like comfortable practical accuracy. I'd say 15 yards is really sort of pushing it to its edge of its practical, effective, good shot placement accuracy. I've made shots out to 25, probably farther with this thing. You can do it, but for your average person, I would say, 15 is probably maybe even pushing it for your average person.
Yeah, in a self-defense situation for one of these, I mean, you're looking at 2 to 3 shots immediately, and those are going to be your shots where your adrenaline kicks up and you're kind of they talk about like the hitbox, the center mass, where you're going to be aiming, and once you get out past 15 yards with your adrenaline going, it starts to become more of a trying to hit a moving target instead of trying to take a target or make a target stop. And anything inside 15 yards is really what these are going to be the best for. I mean, if something's even at 7 yards, you're going to be able to kind of point and shoot, especially if you know what you're doing. You're not going to have to worry about hitting a certain part. I mean, when you go and you practice with shooting guns, sometimes you're like, oh, I want to hit this part of the target. Whereas in a self-defense situation, it's kind of just aiming for center mass. But center mass, once your target starts moving further than 15 yards, it becomes a smaller target. And at that point, you're more aiming than you are defending yourself.
Like I was saying, 15 is probably the most you could expect to realistically get consistently out of this pistol. But like you were saying, 7 is probably going to be where this pistol really thrives.
Yeah,
it's going to perform really well in those distances.
All right, so once you've made your choice, whether it's one of these guns or a different gun to carry, you kind of have to be ready to carry and be in the mindset to carry. Kind of like whenever you started driving a car, you were nervous at first. You had to make sure you did the essentials: start your car, put your seatbelt on, make sure that you're in reverse instead of driving when you're pulling out of your driveway. It's just the small things that you don't think about now, but especially when carrying a gun, you need to think about the small things.
Yeah, and I would definitely caution everybody, don't just go out and start carrying a firearm. You really do need to strongly consider these things, get used to the process of equipping your gun, making sure that it's safe, checking its condition, stuff like that. But it takes a lot of preservation of mind, so focus up, try to learn it as best you can. You'll figure it out. It gets a lot easier, but I would say don't just go carry a gun. Learn how to carry a gun and then carry one.
Yeah, something I always did when I first started carrying was I always take the magazine out of the gun, and then kind of every morning I would practice 5 times, drawing from a holster or drawing from my concealed carry position, wherever the gun's gonna be. And it kind of is like a warm up. Whenever you wake up in the morning, you kind of have to rub your eyes, and you have to kind of adjust your eyes to the light, and you're like, okay, I remember how to see again. It's kind of like that. I mean, until you get really confident with manipulating a gun and holding a gun, you're gonna kind of want to be like, okay, there's my gun. If something happens, this is how I'm gonna access it. This is where my hand's gonna be. This is where I want myself to be. And again, you're not doing this to try to, make yourself seem like a badass. You're just trying to make sure you know how to handle your tool, because if you just toss your gun in your purse every single day and you don't know where it's at, or if it's just in a bag and you don't know where it's at, and you have to go and get that gun for, self-defense reason, you're not going to know where it's at. You're going to be all over the place, and it might cost you in the end of things.
One, that's not great because you don't have your gun accessible when you need it. You don't know where it's at, how to get it quick enough to stop a threat, but also that may start to become a danger to other people if you don't know the condition of your gun, exactly where it's at, things like that.
100%. Another thing I wanted to bring up is if you do have a manual safety, like me and Zane were talking about, these manual safeties do play a big role, especially in another level of confidence. So we talked about how you have your ammo, gives you confidence. We talked about, warming up before you go out, that's more confidence. And knowing that you have that extra tactile safety on there, it just puts that little thing in the back of your mind that like, my gun might have a two-step. So Zane's trigger has a press-in safety, and he has the manual safety. The SIG only has a manual safety, but it puts that extra level, especially if you're carrying one in the chamber, it puts that extra level of confidence, knowing that, okay, this gun is a tool. It's not going to fire unless I fire it. And it's just like, it's that other thing to get used to. If you forget that your gun has a manual safety and you take it out and go to use it and the gun does not activate because you have that, obviously you could put yourself in a bad situation. So it's one of those things to practice and also to remember, always flip up, put your gun on safe, and then put your magazine in, and then you should be ready to go.
All right, so you've decided to carry a gun. But before you go out and carry a gun, you're gonna want to go to the range, get accustomed to shooting, figure a few things out, maybe grow a little bit of confidence in your firearm, your skills, So I would recommend maybe before you purchase your firearm, just go out and test out a couple. But maybe you've already made the decision to buy a firearm. You need to go to that range. I would say, you know, bare minimum 500 rounds on this gun.
Yep.
You know, 500 is really not that much. If you shoot a lot, you know, you can go through that in one day easy. You know, 2 days maybe, but you're gonna wanna put at least 500 rounds on that gun. So that's for a couple of reasons. So number one, you just wanna make sure the thing is reliable, that it's actually gonna function, that, you know, after a series of you know, magazines through that, it's not gonna start jamming up or getting too dirty. You wanna make sure that it can run with a variety of ammunition is also good to check. But really what you're doing is getting custom I should say, to your firearm, how it shoots, the recoil. You know, you need to know how much this is gonna kick so that you can know how much to control it, and just building that relationship with your gun. Things are gonna be awkward at first, right? Especially with a small gun like this. I know manipulating things can be a little bit weird. You might have to change your grip up, or, you know, just figure out how to make the best of it, right? Like, I'll give you a little tip, you know, if some of these springs can be a little bit tight, right? Like on the slide, a lot of people have issues racking them. So to make it a little bit easier, you know, you can pull back on the slide, but also push forward with the frame. So you're kind of splitting up that work half and half to make it a little bit easier. But sometimes you need to figure out techniques like that to make the gun work better for you. But put those 500 rounds on this gun, make sure that you feel comfortable shooting it, that you know how it works, and that you know that it's reliable.
Kind of going off what Zane said, 500 rounds, we're talking about, you know, range ammo. Don't go out and buy 500 rounds of self-defense ammo and shoot that. I mean, it's just gonna be a waste of money at that point. But I would say after you shoot those 500 rounds, take a day or two off and go back and shoot, you know, between 50 and 100 rounds of self-defense ammo. And that's really gonna help with two things. It's gonna, you know, put you in a scenario of shooting what you would actually be shooting if you were in a self-defense situation, and also making sure your gun is able to run that ammo. Some ammo works well in some guns and some doesn't. And those were just basically like malfunctions of the gun, something that you can't really control regardless. I mean, you could shoot 500 rounds through your gun and then shoot 2 rounds of your self-defense, and 1 round gets held up and doesn't extract. And that would obviously be a really bad situation. It could be life or death, and you wouldn't even have known it. So I would say make sure you shoot and break in your gun. Make sure you clean it after you shoot it. It's just like a car. You know, you want to make sure you maintain it, give it some good maintenance. I would say put some of those self-defense rounds in and really test it out, see what happens. But I mean, now we can kind of talk about hollow points and which ones that they should get.
Absolutely. So yeah, you know, like he was saying, the you don't want to be shooting the hollow points at the range, but you know, let me grab a FMJ real quick. We'll show you the difference. I've got these 2 rounds here. They're different calibers. This one is a 9, but hopefully you can see here the difference. So this one here on the left is going to be an FMJ, or a target round. This is what your range ammunition looks like. This is what you want to shoot at your targets. This is what you want to shoot at a threat. This is a hollow point. It's a defensive round meant to stop a threat and do only that. So there's a big difference between these rounds. Hopefully this gives you a good visualization on what to look for. If you are looking for defensive rounds, open up the box, make sure that it looks like this on the right here, and that you're not buying the wrong stuff, because this will not be good in a life or death situation, and this will be what you want over here. So just to sort of give a visual representation. But so the hollow point itself, right? You know, it stops the threat. How does it do that? It's going to, you see that opening there, it's going to expand, and it's going to basically dump all of its energy into what it's hitting and cause one big massive, you know, cavity or something like that, right? What it's not gonna do is continue to go through that target, hit other things, and cause more damage. So that's why it's perfect for a self-defense situation, and that's why it's absolute necessity for your everyday carry. We actually have 2 different rounds here. So on the right, you can see this is Critical Defense by Hornady. This is what Sam has in the P365. And on the left here, this is Hornady Black, also hollow point, same manufacturer, similar bullets, just slightly different. You really want to find what works for your gun, right? I know a lot of people favor different rounds. There's a lot of, you know, different opinions on what's good, what's the best. But the most important thing is you want to find a round that's gonna work in your gun and under every condition. You want to make sure that this thing doesn't jam when it's dirty, that it feeds properly, you get through a full magazine. It's not, don't just top load a couple rounds and try to verify your ammo. But basically, there's different rounds out there. I ran into some issues early on actually using these exact rounds that Sam's using on his gun, and the bodyguard just for whatever reason didn't want to feed those rounds. So I had to switch it up, try some other rounds, moved on, finally found these Hornady Black that performed pretty well. I think I tried some SIG V Crown or something like that as well. Those worked pretty well. But just make sure that you find a round that your gun can shoot consistently, that you feel comfortable with.
Yeah. And kind of what Zam was talking about, the reason why we're shooting hollow points for self-defense is because of the over-penetration of a full metal jacket. If it hits tissue, if it hits drywall, it can go right through something. And I always tell people this when they're interested in guns, not to obviously carry full metal jacket, and it's because you're gonna be responsible for every single round that is sent from your gun in a self-defense situation. And if that goes through somebody or something that you're defending yourself against, and it hits something that you do not want it to, you are still liable for that person or object that you hit. So the reason we do hollow points, I always tell people, is because whenever it hits, it's going to hit like you're getting hit in the chest, and it's going to stop that person, making them fall or making that object stop. Whereas full metal jacket will go straight through, especially because of adrenaline. That person, animal, whatever it is, it might just go straight through and they might not even feel it. And then you could put yourself in a really bad situation. Definitely make sure you get a hollow point that fits your gun. You can buy, and you don't have to buy 100 rounds of, up front. You can buy 4 different kinds, test all of them out. There's a bunch of good ones out there. See which one you like. And to be quite honest, they're not cheap. There's a reason why they're expensive, is because the quality control that goes into these is extreme and intensive. And I would say just do more research on ammo in general, and you should be able to find a really good option. All right, so after you purchase your gun, and after you've put your gun through all the testing it needs to with the hollow points, after you've broken the gun in with all your range ammo, you're now gonna need to prepare to carry your gun. If you do intend to, you have to make that personal decision. You need to have a conversation with yourself if you're ready to do that, if you trust yourself. If you had to be put in that situation, would you be able to handle yourself in that situation? So what I would say, night before you have decided that you're gonna start carrying a gun from now on, make sure you have all the right clothes picked out. If you're gonna carry on your body, make sure you have the correct equipment. If you have a holster, if you have a carry belt, or if you have a belly band, whatever you're gonna wear, even if it's an ankle holster, make sure you have everything laid out the day before. You kind of want to get and start building a routine.
All right, so now day one, first day carrying a gun, what you're gonna do, you're gonna take your gun, inspect it, make sure it's clear, good working condition, function, just test everything, make sure that it works correctly as expected while it's empty. Once you've done that, verified everything works, what you're gonna do is take your magazine, and we'll just start loading rounds in here. So we'll just hand load these. For demonstration, these are range rounds, but you would use your defensive rounds when you're loading your handgun. So you'll just go ahead and push these rounds in. Can be a little bit difficult. I like to push down with my thumb here, and push with the back of the casing with my next round to just slide it in. If that's a little bit too difficult, you can use a speed loader. These will tremendously help out and save your thumbs. So squeeze that in. Finish loading these with the speed loader here. So this is the 12 round magazine on the Bodyguard 2.0, just for example. All right, once you have your magazine fully loaded, you're going to take your empty pistol. And if you have a manual safety, I'd recommend flipping your safety on before you insert any magazine or any ammo into your firearm. So we'll make sure our safety is on, take our loaded magazine, insert it into the bottom, make sure it is seated. You are then going to pull back on your slide, let go, 2 chamber round. You don't want to baby this forward. It may jam on you, it may not fully chamber, so I recommend letting it slingshot forward. Once you've done that, remember your safety is still on. What you're gonna do is remove your magazine now, take 1 extra bullet, and top off your magazine. Get the speed loader here. So now, what you're gonna do is to put your magazine back into your gun, make sure it's seated, and at that point we have 12 rounds at the grip, plus 1 in the chamber. So this is how I would recommend carrying it. At this point, keep your safety on, go ahead and holster it if you have a holster, if that's your method of carry. But generally, you know, take it seriously. Once it's loaded especially, keep that safety on. And it's always a good thing to just double check that safety is on, double check the condition of your weapon. So that's gonna be the first time you're loading your firearm. All right, cool. So day 2, you have carried a firearm for 1 day. Now in the morning on the second day, what you're going to do is simply remove your magazine, inspect it, make sure that it is fully loaded, and then keeping the barrel pointed in a safe direction, you're going to just gently pull back onto the slide. You'll be able to see if you have a round chambered. Let go, make sure it's still in battery. What up? Just barely pull back on your slide to make sure that you can see that there is a round chambered, indeed. You're going to let go, give it a tap on the back of the slide to make sure that it is seated. Now you verify the condition of your firearm. So that's going to be something you want to do every day before you take it out. And that's the entire process that you need to know to carry a gun. Thanks for watching. Go ahead and like and subscribe. This is Perfect Zero TV. Till next time.